Hello, hello. People are popping in from the waiting room. We're just gathering in this space, so just give us a few seconds to for everyone to get populated into the main room. Hi, Marilee.
Hi, Michelle. It's good to see you.
You too.
Hope you're keeping well.
I see everybody's got themselves renamed, which is great. I think everybody does. If you want to right click on your name and add in where you're coming from, that would be kind of cool for people to see the range of where everybody's coming from. You could add that to your name, because we have folks from far and wide.
And if you're not super familiar with Zoom, again, as Kathy said, it's just right click and it gives you the option to rename yourself. The third thing down says rename. So welcome everyone. My name is Michelle Howard. I see some familiar faces, maybe some faces that I haven't seen in a long time. I see some familiar names. We are glad that you're here with us today. We wanted to create this opportunity just as a gathering space, giving all that's been going on in our world. It's important that we take some time to sort of orient ourselves to how we can collectively be and move together as a community, given our current situation. And as this community works with and seeks to protect or seek to address keeping families safe, keeping children safe, and empowering those families, we believe that it's also important for you all to empower yourselves and keep yourselves safe, healthy, and whole in whatever manner that works for you. So I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping things before we get started into some content with Steve. He's going to talk a little bit about trauma. This is not a space where we're going to be telling you what to do. This is a space for conversation. So we want to invite you into the conversation that allows you to learn from other people, sort of grab some nuggets of gold and wisdom that others have experienced or can offer to share with you as we are all in this together. It's an opportunity to build the connection, and it's an opportunity for all of us to learn. And I want to just highlight, particularly for us at the Kempe Center, we want to know what you're needing. So there's going to be a chance for you to kind of describe that. And as you explain that for yourself, it could be cathartic and helpful. But we also want to kind of take note of those things so that we can be responsive as much as we can be to what's needed out there in the community. If you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll try to catch your hand. And you can verbally ask it, and you can also chat it. We want to hear your voice, but given that we have, I think, 62 people on the call right now, we may not get a chance to hear everybody's voices, but we want to invite you into the conversation, so either verbally or through the chat. And we have Casey that's monitoring the chat right now, so she's going to try to bring forward themes, questions that everybody's asking in the chat room, or even just points people are making there. If there's a resource need, a resource question that you have, we're also going to try to take note of that. We can't necessarily, we may not have time to respond to those questions, but feel free to ask, and we'll do our best to respond to it and get back to you with any knowledge or information we might have. If you can, share your video. We would love to see your face. Not compelled to, but we would love to see your face. It just kind of changes the energy a little bit when we're able to see all of you from all over. We appreciate that. And again, if you have an opportunity to put your name in the chat there. So with that, I want to turn it over to Kathy to also welcome you all and get some context around why we are doing this.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Kathy Wells. I am a child abuse pediatrician and the executive director of the Kempe Center. I've been in this role just over a year, but I've been working in the field for almost 20 years as a practitioner seeing kids with concerns of abuse or neglect. And It's truly a real honor and a pleasure to have all of you here today. You know, as we ventured into these unprecedented times together at the center, we met with our leadership team, with many of our staff and faculty, and really tried to understand how we could be most helpful in these uncertain and challenging times. And what we decided is that we were hopeful that we had expertise and resources both internally and with partnerships that we share across the university and our larger system that could create a space for folks to share and learn from one another. But what we really needed to do was to hear what you needed. And so we put out this request, or we put out this opportunity to come spend some time together. And we asked you when you signed up what you needed to hear. And we've actually compiled all that, and we've heard several themes. And one of the first things we knew folks needed to hear was where we're all connected in this work. And so that's why this first session today, meaning we're going to have more of these, is to invite Dr. Berkowitz, who's a child psychiatrist from the University of Colorado with expertise in trauma, to spend some time talking with all of you about this time that we're sharing together, this time of uncertainty and crisis. But what I wanted to say to you all as we begin and think together and spend this time is, first of all, as I said, thanks for being here, because I know you have a tremendous amount of competing demands and other things you feel like you probably should or could be doing, but yet you chose to spend some time with us. So I would encourage you, to the extent that you can, as Michelle said, feel free to turn on your video if you feel comfortable sharing your image with each other, because I think it's fun to see each other. Rename yourself if you want to as to where you're coming from. You all represent, at least the registrants represented 22 states, Canada and Egypt, just to let you know who you're spending time with this next hour and 15 minutes, and a wide variety of expertise. So a lot of child welfare professionals, but we have legal folks, judge, healthcare, mental health, community organizations, child advocacy centers, just a lot of folks that work in this space of child maltreatment together. And you know, this morning when I got up and I used my free app, you know, you have all these great free apps now we can download and exercise with millions of people together across the country. The person that was doing the class said something that really resonated with me. And she said, where we focus will magnify. And then she said, I choose, and the word she used was hope. And I would invite you that we can choose what we want to magnify in the world, right? We can choose whether that's future, whether that's community, whether that's connection. And the reality is, I want to acknowledge and I want to be very clear that this is an unsettling time. And if you didn't have anxiety and fear and angst, then I would think that maybe I would actually try to, as a doctor, I would check a pulse, right? Because I think we all have those things. And we're helpers. I think by the nature of the field that we're spending our time in together is that we want to help. And so the easy thing to do is to figure out, how can I work harder and faster and help others? When I was finishing my residency, I was able to go to the Dominican Republic and provide medical service there. And since that time, it was such a rich experience that when things have happened across the world, I thought, because I took an oath and I was given a gift as a physician to help people in that way, that I needed to go there. So when things happened in Haiti, the hurricane happened, I really wanted to go. And I thought, no, I need to be here. There's work to be done here. And I will tell you, for me, it's been sometimes hard being a physician during this time, because I'm not in a position to put on a mask and gloves and go to the hospital and see the sickest patients. But the way we help is so many different ways. And most importantly, if we don't take care of ourselves and identify what our own needs are first, it's very difficult for us to help others. And so I would encourage you to think about, how can we take care of, and that's the common thread for all of us, that we take care of ourselves first, and then we get the opportunity to reach out and help others. And so at the center, when we talked about doing this, we talked about naming it as a village, that this is a virtual village, that we are in this crazy time that all over the country and world, we connect in this way, regardless of what our degree is, who we work for, whether we're an administrator or a frontline worker, we're all in this boat together, right? And that we share that experience together, and we share that as a community, and we also get a chance to share best practices across disciplines. So how can what we're learning about telehealth help inform caseworkers that are having to maybe do visits virtually? And so how can we start to share across systems in a way that makes all of our work richer? So As I said, we represent today 22 states, folks from other countries. And what we're going to spend time doing is we're going to hear Dr. Berkowitz talk a little bit about how do we take care of ourselves in this time together. And then we're going to shift and we're going to give you all an opportunity to share with each other and share with us what are your needs, so that the next steps for us as a center is to bring you some theme-based, real rich, multidisciplinary experiences for sharing best practices, knowledge, and work together. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Berkowitz, who will spend a little bit of time sharing with you some of the knowledge he's had from his very rich experience in the work of trauma and resilience, even around situations like disasters. So thank you all for being here, and Dr. Berkowitz.
I thank you, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share some of my thoughts. And I know everybody has a lot on their plate these days, regardless of what you're officially doing. Just so you know a little bit about me and why I would even be doing this. I am a child and adolescent psychiatrist. I run a lifespan trauma program here at the University of Colorado, the School of Medicine. But I cut my teeth on disaster response after 9/11 when I was at Yale, and we had a lot of people affected by 9/11 and worked closely with the state to provide services. Did some work around Katrina as well. Was one of the contributors for the Skills for Psychological Recovery manual. And so I've been doing this work for quite a while. So I thought I'd start with just two stories that I've heard recently that I think may resonate. One actually I heard yesterday, which is, I hadn't thought about it, but when I heard it, I went, oh my God, of course. From a partner of a first responder who, the first responder, who's a female, is out working, sort of doing her regular thing, though under some very stressful circumstances, while her partner is at home managing the kids, and whose job is, she, I believe, was furloughed, and who's feeling very resentful of the first responder partner because their lives haven't been uprooted and changed as much as hers have been. And that she's, now at home 24/7, managing homeschool, not feeling fulfilled through her work. And I thought that was, fascinating and part of this current experience that I don't think I had actually thought about. But I can imagine that she's not the only one feeling this way right now. And then the other was from about a week ago when I was talking to a nurse practitioner who works in respiratory unit at the hospital here, who had literally returned from maternity leave about 2 weeks before COVID hit, and has, I think, a 5-month-old, but is now going home and self-isolating because of her exposure, and not seeing or seeing from a distance, but not being able to hold and spend time with her newborn, which has to be devastating for any new parent. And yet here's a reality that she's facing. So, what that makes me think in many ways is how none of us here signed up for this kind of work, for the notion that we are going to work on a regular basis, over those of you who are leaving your house, which I think are probably many, and feeling scared to go to work. Or if you're at home, scared for those around you, for family, friends who may be exposed and potentially contracting this disease. This is all new for us. We just didn't train for this, and it puts a burden on us in so many ways. It was unanticipated. I think that's, really important to think about, and to let that sink in a way that we need to give ourselves permission for feeling stressed, for feeling irritable, for not necessarily feeling that we're doing our best under these circumstances, because very few of us can or are. And that's it's hard. Many of us really have a high standard for ourselves, but to experience the current events and give ourselves permission to make mistakes, to do things that we might not feel necessarily the best about, I think is really important. I also think it's really useful to have a bit of a reframe. A lot of you on this video chat do a lot of reframing in your work and your jobs, but as human beings, as living things, we focus often on things that are dangerous, that are threatening. That's what helps us survive, rather than taking things for granted. And so when we hear about some pandemic and infection that is potentially deadly, we focus on those statistics about how many people contract the disease, how many people die from the coronavirus. And those numbers are large and often overwhelming. But if we flip them and we look at the population of the country or the world, another way of looking at it is how few people are contracting the COVID-19, and how many people who contract it survive. So the data probably is that greater than 99.5% of people are going to survive this pandemic, and I think that's just important to keep in mind. Now, there are all other sorts of things that we need to consider that are concerning and upsetting, such as the economic fallout, changes to the way our life, how are we going to do and rethink about this in the future. But there's also opportunity, and so I think trying to focus on the opportunity, new ways of doing things that may actually be better, or at least integrating them with some of the old ways, really can help us see through the next weeks or months that we're experiencing. What I'd like to do actually is show you a slide that I think can be helpful in thinking about your activities and how you live your life in these times. So this came out of some work that people did primarily post-Katrina, but was based on the activities of many of us in psychological first aid and the skills for psychological recovery. And Katrina's was one of those events that the long-term impact lasted quite a while, 4 to 5 years for many of the population. And so this is I think a reasonable analogy to COVID and what we're experiencing. So the 5 elements are establishing a sense of safety. And we can do that with the social distancing, staying at home, PPE use it correctly. Hopefully you have PPE and access when you're out in the community. And so safety is really important for you and your family, and anything you are doing to stay safe should be noted and supported. The ability and capacity to calm. So I'm we mental health professionals don't necessarily support distraction in our sessions, but distraction is a really useful way of coping with stress. And really thinking about being distracted by things that are enjoyable, that are funny, that aren't stressful and tension inducing. I'm a firm believer, and I think there's good data to support that laughter and humor are really excellent ways to cope and to calm oneself. Mindfulness, and I'm not in the necessarily meditating, but taking that break to look out the window, to look at nature as spring is coming, and just spend a couple minutes just breathing and looking out the window and experiencing your inner self, so to speak, in a calm way. And then having supportive conversations like the ones we hope to have today with loved ones and those around you that support you. So I think those are really important aspects, and it's easy to be distracted and to laugh at some of those great memes that we're all getting and videos that are coming around. This forum is really, more than anything else, about what I believe to be the most important aspect of coping under these really stressful experiences, which is connecting, being with others. So there's a paradox here. We talk about social distancing. Physical distancing is probably more apt, but we don't have to be emotionally distant. And so things like this forum, having meetings with your colleagues on a regular basis, virtual meetings with family and friends, having a fun thing like happy hour. Somebody was telling me they did a virtual twister. I can't quite figure that one out, but that's what they did. Or virtual bingo, or any of those things can be quite enjoyable. And then, for your kids, there's no reason not to have virtual play dates or some form of play dates. I want to take a little bit of a tangent here because I think one of the other things, particularly in the child welfare field, is thinking about sort of risk and benefit. COVID is not the only thing that can hurt somebody and can be damaging. And if there are families that are really stressed out and can't manage on their own, I don't think there's a problem with extending their family to their neighbors if they're really at risk and they need that kind of support. So within all of these rules, we have to be flexible and recognize that there are risks and benefits to many of the things we do. Having a sense of future. We will come out of this, right? I have another slide that you won't see today, which says, this too shall pass. It may pass like a kidney stone, but it's going to pass. And so it's not going to be easy, but we're going to come out the other end. So thinking about what that would look like, making plans for courses, for improvement, making plans for the summer or vacation, or, with family and how you're going to see them again, is really important to keep a sense of going forward, and that you're not stuck in this, quagmire or twilight zone that we're experiencing. And then last is this sense of efficacy, which I think, is really something that most of you here are experiencing. You're being effective, you're doing your job, you're taking care of others, sometimes maybe to a fault. You're over responding and overcompensating for others who are so needy at this time. So that's helpful, and to also prepare for contingencies. Do your jobs at work and at school, or virtual school, or homeschool, as the case may be. Or do things for others. I had a colleague whose kids made, some artwork and placed on elderly neighbor's doorstep. That makes you feel good, effective, and doing things for others. So I think most importantly is this connectedness and being able to share and talk to one another. So I'm going to stop here and let you converse and ask questions. Hopefully we can enjoy and learn from each other today.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Again, I love the tips, the notes of how we can take care of ourselves that you provided on that slide, and some of the stories that you shared. I can't imagine playing Twister via Zoom either. I wonder how that works. I want to open it up to what your thought, what's resonating for you now from what Steve shared, what questions you have. And I also, not to put Dr. Thorotnick on the spot, but he shared a story as well yesterday that was also very compelling about the whole social distancing and doing so, and the impact that can have on just who we are as human beings. Would you mind sharing that again?
My Safeway story?
Say again?
My Safeway story?
Yes.
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 The question came up. It was actually, hi, I'm Andy Sorotnick. I'm one of the child abuse pediatricians at the Kempe Center, working with Dr. Wells, our leader. And the question yesterday was about safety medically in social distancing, and how the ambiguity in some of our messages that we've gotten from either local, state, or federal governments, how they can be confusing, just to know how to keep ourselves safe, like Dr. Berkowitz was talking a little bit about. So somehow in my head popped in the story of a gallon of milk. So I had to get a gallon of milk because I'd been out of it. And I just went to Safeway, just blocks away from my home. And it was pretty deserted, but there was an elderly couple that was also doing the same thing. And there really wasn't very many people in line. And this couple sort of crossed over the 6-foot mark, I guess, that's in the floor now. And the well-meaning Safeway checkout person at the self-checkout person basically screamed at them and said, "You can't do that. Please don't do that. You're putting people at risk." And so there I am with my milk, and there's this elderly couple with their milk. So they start crying. I should have offered to buy their milk, but what I did is I went to the checkout person first and said, "Let me just intervene here, and if you could maybe just step back, calm a bit, and realize that everybody is stressed and in pain right now. They weren't anywhere near me. I don't feel unsafe, but the way we talk can make the situation feel unsafe." So then he started crying, and basically the point was, things have changed. Well-meaning messages and well-meaning intentions may not even sound that way anymore. So it reminded me that to dig deep into who we are as professionals, helpers, like Dr. Walls was saying, and find just that little bit of kindness, even if it comes with a jug of milk.
It's a reminder that even though we might think that we're fine, I'm managing, I'm handling this okay, we're almost all on a higher state of alert. Sometimes I feel in my body it's like it's tingling, and it's just like maybe adrenaline. I don't know. I'm not a physician. Something is there that puts me at a higher stress level. What's that hormone that puts out that stress? It's like it's there. And that's the thing that we all might be experiencing and not fully acknowledging now, which is why it's important for you all to think about the impact all of this is having on you as a caregiver, as a person that wants to care and take care of others and see happy, healthy, safe individuals in all of the pockets or arenas you're working with. So I want to open it and invite questions, thoughts, perspectives around anything that's been shared thus far? Cortisol. Thank you, Anne.
You want me to talk about cortisol?
Andy chatted the hormone that causes all that stress is cortisol.
I think it'd be interesting to hear Dr. Berkowitz talk a little bit about what really does happen in these times, and that we do actually have a biologic response.
Well, yes. One way of thinking about who we are is that we're biological machines, and our emotions and our psychology and our thoughts have biological underpinnings. So right now, as we're talking, you're having a biological response, and there are changes going on in your brain as you're taking in and trying to remember, thinking about some of the things we're discussing. And one of the primary biological responses, in fact, the danger response or stress response system is pretty much the same in all mammals. And that is that when we feel threatened or endangered, we produce a range of neurotransmitters and hormones, but probably the most important among them is cortisol. And cortisol is very useful under stress, whether it's physical stress or emotional stress, in that it helps us really do a better job of using glucose effectively under stress. But in these circumstances, when stress is, a constant in particular, and doesn't have the opportunity to go back to baseline, it can be very harmful, both to how our brains function and even structure, as well as to our health. Our immune systems are impacted negatively by stress, and particularly by cortisol. And so those 5 elements I talked about are as much physiological approaches as psychological and emotional approaches to maintaining some equilibrium under stress.
Hi, Steve. This is the voice of the chat box, letting you know, saying thank you for normalizing how I'm feeling. And how might you recommend I explain what I'm experiencing and what I'm working with every day in the world of child welfare to my family, who may not understand?
Right. I think it's again by analogy is probably the best way, or metaphor. Everybody has had some experience that they are finding difficult to manage, to overwhelming or stressful, and to use their own experiences, but then to talk about what that would be like day in and day out. And I think that's the way that you might be able to explain it to your family. I think for those of you who are working in child welfare, you are often working with families who are feeling this kind of stress that we're feeling now, as part and parcel of their lives. So I think learning from their experiences and trying to translate that for family and friends via analogy is an important way to go. You know it very well. We just have to find the word for it.
Thanks for that, Steve.
I
I'm
think
wondering, oh, sorry, Michelle, for the chat box, can any of the experts respond to how might I explain to my family that they may feel at risk by my work, at risk for COVID because of the interactions I'm having through the course of my day?
How have others crossed that? How have others done that?
I think this is the thing I've been struggling to face, and that is the bottom line is, as careful as we are trying to be every day, we probably are increasing risk for the rest of them. I'm the one that goes out, and the rest of my family is, home and sheltering in place. I talk about the things I do to self-protect, the measures that we've taken here at the department to minimize contact. But I think at the end of the day, the reality is, because of what we do, there is some increased risk to our families, and that's tough to face.
So there's no doubt that that it is the case. I think it's very important to keep in mind and discuss what all those measures are, and to together think about other things that you may not be doing that are to be protective and to prevent them from being exposed. And again, as I mentioned earlier on, I think it's really important to remember that most people who are exposed are going to be just fine, and most people who get the illness are going to be just fine. So that while nobody wants to expose their families and nobody wants to take the risk, and we should do everything we can to prevent that. It's not a death sentence that we're exposing them to, right? It's an illness, and it's quite different.
So I just had a,
You may speak. Go ahead.
I had a
Please do.
question on behalf of a coworker who could not be here. She's just voiced a lot of anxiety about, she has a 2-year-old child at home. She has elderly parents who she relies on watching her 2-year-old child so she can come to work, and where that balance is of her job is protection, safety, being with families, but not exposing her elderly parents or infant to this. And she's got just a lot of anxiety over this right now.
Yeah, I think on the earlier week's call, I didn't know if I made this analogy very well, but we live with ambiguity in medical assessment and decision-making all the time. Some things are very clear and straightforward. You have a rash and a fever and a sore throat, so it's probably strep throat. And that's contagious, but we can treat that. And the far end of this is you have some very rare risk of a type of unusual cancer that runs in your family. And you don't worry every day that you or your kids are going to get that. And right smack in the middle of this is this really weird new virus that, even though it's been around for a little bit of time now, we're learning more about it. We're learning that, yes, some people are at more risk, some people aren't. Kids are okay with this for the most part. We know that. As are pregnant women, we're starting to see maybe a little bit, but that still doesn't feel good because it's still so new and frightening. And I think as medical providers, we might say, and those that are on the call here today, maybe you can offer a pearl too, as we look towards the front end of this, so as we look into the future of it, we're going to know a lot more about this as we get through it. That doesn't help us right now, I know. I think sharing the anxiety about the ambiguity of what we know and don't know is really important, and not over messaging what we don't know sometimes, and really focusing on what we do know about protection and safety. I don't know if that's reassuring, Kathy, Antonia.
Andy, I would echo what you said, and thank you. I think the other thing that's resonated with me is those of us in the healthcare setting are often getting daily updates about what we do and don't know. And I think what it's underscored for me is there isn't a lot, there's a lot that we don't know. and even the experts are still, so rather than that feeling more stressful for me, in some ways it feels a little bit comforting that, you know, we're all doing the best we can. And I think all of us, and I would assume that many of you are having to make decisions. And sometimes you make a decision and you find out a week later that we've changed the rules, or maybe it's a day later, and maybe it's an hour later. But finding some level of comfort in that we're all kind of in this together. And, you know, even in our healthcare settings, we'll have the 2 infectious disease experts on a call with 300 plus people because everybody's so hungry for information. And yet it's still evolving. And so we were hoping that creating this opportunity to at least share some of what we know and creating spaces for this would be helpful, but also recognizing that not knowing isn't because you just haven't gathered the right information. It's because we're all learning together, if that makes sense. And Michelle, I think you're muted, but you look like you were saying something super important. So
Not that important, but I was going to segue us. I was just thanking you, Steve and Andy, for offering your perspective. And yeah, we are all in this together. Changes daily, you hear new information daily, and you try to protect yourself. So that's a lot. And none of it may be super comforting, and some of it may be comforting. But right now, what I wanted to do was invite you all into a space to have a conversation with one another. What I want you to focus on in your conversation is what's working, what is not currently working, and if you let go of any of the stories that you might tell yourself, like, it's more important to take care of someone else than it is for me. It's more, I don't have the opportunity to slow down and get what I need. Whatever the story might be, if you let go of those stories and really identify what you are needing now and how you might be able to get that need met, I want you to have a discussion in your small groups about that, because it will do 2 things. It will hopefully help you sort of provide some information, bring some information into the system, not just for you, but also to the small groups that you're in. And that information, to me, is kind of like a little packet of gold that you might not have thought of that someone else can offer or share. Or it's also, I'm not in this alone. I've had those same kind of feelings, those same thoughts, and I can see that in the chat right here. That connection around similar experiences. It'll give us information about how best to move forward in providing what we can to support you all through this pandemic as you continue to do the hard work of working with children and families and protecting them, saving lives in the healthcare profession, working to help reduce mental health needs and stresses that we all are experiencing just because of right now. Those kinds of things. So I'm going to stop talking and just have Amanda place you all into small groups. There's going to be groups of 5, and she's going to post those questions, broadcast those questions to you in the group, so you don't have to be able to hear that this is temporary and that we're going to get out of this, and that most people survive and take the precautions that you need to take, but I'm still here. So I wanted to invite into this conversation through your discussions. What are you doing to quiet the fear? Kathy said earlier, what we focus on will magnify. So if I'm focusing on the fear, and I'm reading an article, I'm Googling this, and I'm watching the news multiple times a day, then it just really sends my heart rate up. It honestly has done that. So I had to finally say I can't do that anymore. I have to not check in on it, only check in with the news maybe 1 time a day, not look stuff up, just kind of trust that whatever's on the other side is going to happen, and quiet the fear in order just to be present right now. What's there from your discussions? What did you learn that's working? Pam, if you're speaking, I see your lips moving, but you're on mute. Okay.
There we
thank
go.
you.
I forget to do that. In our group, I think we kind of weaved our way to everybody offering the different possibilities that could exist in the future from having been through this as individuals, as a society, as a country. Maybe there will be different behaviors, different availability of technology, different ways of caring for oneself and others that will truly be not different temporarily, but can be different and better permanently when we get on the other end of this tunnel, is the way I was hearing it from other people in our group. And that gives me optimism.
Yeah, I love that. What else? I mentioned yesterday, it's kind of like thinking about when you get on an airplane, you're always told to put your mask on first before helping someone else. That's a form of putting your mask on.
Michelle, there's quite a few notes coming in through the chat box. I don't know if you want those spoken out loud or just to give people space to read them, but just to know some are responding through that vehicle.
Kate, if you want to read some of them, I think that's fine, or summarize what's being shared.
Sure. Some positivity coming from, it sounds like Child Welfare Voices, that actually the conducting services virtually is breaking down some barriers that have been there for a long time, and allowing engagement to happen even more successfully. And I see some nods around the room as that gets said out loud. Others are reminding us the importance to breathe and to make time to get outside every day and let vitamin D have its way with you. Exercise is super important. That's the themes of what we've got here so far. I'll come back when there's more.
Yeah. I haven't played hopscotch since maybe I was 10 years old. That was quite a while ago. But I got outside and I'm like, how do you play hopscotch? How do you draw this on? I had to look it up on Google. I'm like, oh yeah, that's how you do it. So I played hopscotch with my niece and my granddaughter. Like, I hadn't done this in forever, but it lifted me out of the haze that feels like it can become oppressive if we focus too hard on it.
How many people thought that working from home would make life easier and have found it a little bit more challenging to create some boundaries? I'm seeing some nods.
Molly, I see you raise your hand immediately.
There's some hell yeses coming through chat on that comment.
I will say you can do some creative things. Our team, we had virtual Family Feud, one of the early Friday afternoon events. How many people have done fun things on Zoom?
We also did a virtual wine tour as a Kempe Center one Friday afternoon.
I have to share Marilee Sherry from Ontario's quote. Marilee, are you going to share it?
Yeah, sure, Andy.
I need people to hear what Marilee said. I'm going to put her on the spot because I got a tear in my eye.
Thank you, Andy. So, when I think about this, what's going on in our world right now, there are many ways to be afraid. And I've really been working hard not to let fear take over. And what I've been noticing is happening for our world during this time is that the earth is having a chance to rest. Mm-hmm. There's much less pollution. I'm seeing way more birds than I think I've ever seen, just in my backyard. The elk are taking over Main Street in Banff, Alberta, when normally that's bumper to bumper cars. The earth is resting, and the earth needs a rest, and perhaps we need a rest too. And to just take a deep breath and step back, and what really are we doing? What's really needed and what isn't? What can we let go of?
Yeah, it's beautiful, Marilee. Really beautiful. I would add to that, when I use this tool called or still called the third entity, when you tap into the voice of the virus, and I'm like, what is it saying to us? And what came to me is we were headed over a cliff at high speed, and then we had to slow down for the earth to rest. And we've been so busy othering each other, we need to focus on the things that really matter, that we are not other, we're just a we. We're just a collective of humanity. Some other things came to me, but that's what it reminds me of when you share that, Marilee. What's needed now? If you were to identify the thing that you need right now to support you through this, what would that be?
Hi, everyone. If I may, my group identified the importance of self-care and being supportive. I think this time has been hard for many individuals, and just to see the way the community, the world has become more supportive in this time, for many, it's really scary. So to just have that family support, community support, a spiritual routine for me personally, and just to, some people put in the chat box, exercising, acknowledging the world. I think those are things that are very important during this time and for me personally.
Thank you. Loredana, if I said your name correctly. What
You
else?
did.
I just want to note on the chat box, there were bears that came downtown to the office and to the courthouse and to the city hall last week. That's pretty cool. One of the things I like to do is watch those nature programs. I'm not much of an outdoors person, but I love to watch it on TV. It's really cool. And there's a really good show on Netflix it's on Disney, about elephants. That's amazing. It's a way to disconnect.
I like there was a post at one point that said people in India can finally see the Himalayas in years, as a part of this kind of earth healing and recovering. They haven't seen the Himalayas in a long time.
Yeah.
And it's coming through. So I think the healing is really key as well.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like there's a theme of just kind of slowing down and appreciating that you can see the Himalayas, appreciating that you can see bears, appreciating that the birds are more present than they were before. That sounds like one of the ways to fight the fear. Sorry, Casey, go ahead.
No, you're okay. Just on behalf of the chat, it sounds like there's a shifting of direction. Definitely appreciation for the Earth's catching of breath. And Marilee, thank you for sharing that story. I'm reading that it feels like a soothing balm to folks, and others are noticing the brightness of the stars in the sky, etc. And then in response to your question, Michelle, about what's needed now, it sounds like maybe there's remembering how enough I am. If you guys could talk about that, how this event has perpetuated the feeling for some helpers of not enoughness and the importance about the reminders around that.
Oh, that's a weighted one in the 5 minutes we have left for the call. The question that comes to mind around that is, what would you be doing different? How would you be different if you were enough? So maybe it's the story that we tell ourselves that we're not enough because we've been so busy hustling for so long in doing, always in the doing, that slowing down and appreciating might allow an opportunity to appreciate that you are enough. And if you weren't, what else would you be doing? How else would you be doing? If there's anything else that you have a sense of a need for, because we're listening, feel free to chat it in the chat box, because we want to preserve that so that we can go back and reflect on how best to support you all of us through this. So feel free to note that. And we're also going to post in the chat box a link that we hope that you complete an evaluation for, just giving us some feedback, and that feedback will allow us to continue to improve and continue to grow and develop. So this is the second time we've done this. The first time was yesterday. So we want to hear from you. And with that, I want to turn it over to Kathy to just kind of share some things about what's coming up.
Well, thank you all. This was great. Thank you for taking your time and sharing your time with each other and with us as we all sort of muddle through this sort of new normal together. As Michelle said, if you can fill out that evaluation, we'll also send it out by email if that is a little easier for folks. We really, this first few sessions was really intended to just hear from you. We have a sense of what we think folks are needing based on conversations, what you shared in terms of your question. What we really want to do is sort of give you one more chance to sort of say, what do you need? And our team is working really hard to pull together some things to meet those needs. And so in terms of next steps, you will be getting an email with a thank you and the evaluation. And of course, Amanda put it in the chat box as well. You will also tonight or tomorrow be getting yet another invitation. So we're going to host another series of these next week. There'll be one on Monday, one on Tuesday, one on Wednesday. So Monday and Tuesday, it'll be 1 to 2:15 Mountain Time. And then the 15th, Wednesday, will be 10:30 to 11:45 Mountain Time. And that one, we're actually going to have Dr. Barbara Fallon from University of Toronto come and spend a little bit of time sharing. I see a smile from Mara Lee, sharing her hard work and her colleagues' work, which is a literature summary of what we know about child welfare and pandemics. And so very fascinating work in terms of what we know. We intentionally wanted this first time together to really be focused on you and us and how we take care of us and yourselves as caregivers and healers and folks that do so much to serve others. The whole oxygen mask analogy is really true. When I first heard that, I was confused. I thought if I had a child next to me, the very first thing I would do is want to put it on my baby. The reality is it's a reminder that we can't help others until we're okay. And we did that intentionally because we really wanted to ground ourselves in that. But we know you have a lot of questions about the work that you're doing, about how we're learning from one another. And so based on this, based on our series next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday with Dr. Fallon, we're really going to be pulling together some, I think, pretty fun things for this new village. And we intentionally named this a village because this is how we're going to get through this. We're stronger together, learning from each other across disciplines, across the country, across the world, as we all
turn off my video
time together. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your attention and vulnerability. Thank you for your stories. I think I will think about this whole thing a little differently when I look at the stars tonight, and I think about the cleaner air that we're breathing and the time that we're learning from each other together. So thank you all. Hope to see you again very soon. You'll be hearing more from us as well. Be well.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.